Hi, welcome to Maple Leaf. I'm Nick Angiers. Today I'm actually going to be in the kitchen. I am making an edible version of this game, Azul, which uses these tiles. Azul is known for having the most yummy looking tiles that aren't actually edible. Please don't eat these tiles. But everybody wants to eat them, so I'm going to be making a version which you can actually eat. Now you could use Starburst candies because they're the exact same size, I think, as these. But that's not nearly as fun. I don't know how this is gonna turn out. This is my first attempt. It could be a total disaster. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So there are 5 different colors in the game, 20 of each. There's also a white starting tile. So there's 101 tiles in the game. So we're using a very simple recipe today. It's just icing sugar and an egg white. 1 egg white to 2 cups of icing sugar. And here we have it. It took a little bit more mixing than I was expecting. I started out with a spatula and then eventually used my mixer on low and then high for about 3 minutes total. What I got was these clumps, and if you squeeze it, you'll be able to form it into shapes. I'm pretty sure that's what we're looking for. Here we have 5 roughly equal piles. Now, looking a bit closely and comparing them with the tiles, I'm obviously not going to get 20 tiles out of each of these portions. I'd say that's good enough for about 5 of these. I ended up using all of the icing sugar, so that's 2 cups of icing sugar, 1 egg white, and I used about 6 teaspoons of water, also about 9 drops of the blue food coloring total. I'm not too concerned about the thickness, but I don't want them to be too thin. So what I've done is I've put the piece of parchment paper on this little square plate here, just because it was spreading out a little bit too much. Now this should be more than enough to do 20 of these. What I'm planning to do is just let it dry and then cut it into the pieces about the size of the Azul tiles. Alrighty, well that took a lot more food coloring than the light blue. For the first one, I just used 6 drops. For the dark blue, it kept looking like the light blue no matter how much I added. I ended up using about half this bottle before it even started to come close to this color here. As you can see, it's still a little bit lighter. I have heard that food coloring in icing will darken as you leave it. And here we have yellow. Once again, I used 1 egg white, 2 cups of icing sugar, which is a lot. I'm starting to run out. I've left this for about an hour and it's starting to dry out. It's not as runny. When I took it out, it didn't spread from the edges that it formed. This was the one that I added more water to. So it looks like these two are actually thicker. I only added 4 teaspoons of water. I think that's a good amount. This is a nice consistency. Okay, so it's now morning of the second day. Let's see how we did. I'm actually pretty satisfied with the dark blue here. Turns out that these liquid food colorings are best for pastel colors, so that's why it's so easy to get these. For darker colors, you want to use the gel ones. So a bit of a learning curve for me. The yellow looks pretty nice too. It's a little bit lighter than the tiles, but close enough. For the black without gel, I wasn't even going to bother trying to get it black. I just went for purple. I think that's a fair approximation. And then I also made a little bit of white just for the starter player icon. Now they're still quite soft, but all in all, I'm pretty satisfied with the way they've turned out so far, and I've still got another day and a bit before the event for them to get more solid. Alrighty, so I've frozen these for about an hour or 2, and they're much more solid now. I'm actually quite impressed with the way the red turned out. Looks very close. They haven't darkened a whole lot, so now I'm just going to take my pizza cutter and I'm going to cut them into pieces as close as I can get to the size of the tiles. And here we have it. Oh, what a mess. As you can see, the freezing didn't really help. It's still very liquidy. The red turned out okay. I think I really need to not add water when I'm making it, and then wait for it to dry much longer than this was, about 14 hours. So it should be at least 24 hours before I attempt to cut it. Alright, well it looks like my little experiment was a failure. I finished making the tiles, but what I did wrong was I added too much water to the icing, so it never actually hardened. I tried freezing it, I tried leaving it to dry for 2 days, and it was still pretty close to liquid. If I were to do it again this way, then I would add less water. I added a few teaspoons, about 4 teaspoons, so probably half of that would be enough to mix it. Any more than that, and it just won't harden. What I did for my backup plan was I bought Starburst candies, which is much easier, kind of the lazy route to making an edible Azul. And it actually worked quite well. The tiles are the perfect size for the spaces, and they mix in the bag, and you can lay them out just as if you're playing Azul. The colors I got matched pretty closely, 3 of the 5. So I had the light blue for the light blue, and then yellow for yellow, red for red. For the black, I used caramels, which weren't ideal because they were a bit of a different size and shape, so when you're taking them out of the bag, you can feel that they're different. And then for the dark blue, I actually used pink ones. So I had to have a bit of a legend you could tell which one was which. I did a little bit of research online, and there are colors that match much more closely. They're just not in the basic flavor set that you get. I'd have to do some digging around to find the right colors, but I think in the future, using the Starburst candies is actually a much better idea than trying to make the icing tiles. So that's the end of that little project. I haven't really used icing before, so I learned a lot about icing and food coloring. And also I realized that there is a much easier solution that works quite well. It's also more sanitary to have the wrappers on the candies. So it was fun, and I'm looking forward to my next project.